The red wine splashed across the white dress, like blood on fresh snow. And for a brief second the entire ballroom froze. Victoria Hartwell tilted her glass slightly, her smile calm, her eyes full of cruelty. "Oops," she whispered with fake innocence, showing perfect teeth and a rotten heart. What a pity that some people don't know how to move properly in civilized settings. The Boston Charity Gala sparkled with chandeliers and soft music. Crystal lights dancing above the East Coast elite. It was a night built for appearances, not compassion. And yet under all that glamour, poison flowed quietly. Jasmine Washington, just 24, carried her tray with quiet grace. An MBA student at Harvard, she had taken this extra shift to help her family, to pay for her final semester, and to keep a promise she made to her mother years ago. Her natural hair was tied in a neat bun. Her uniform spotless, her posture steady. The posture of someone who has carried heavy responsibilities for too long. Victoria, on the other hand, lived a life polished by money and arrogance. Wife of real estate tycoon Robert Hartwell. She treated every gala as a personal runway. Every donation as a performance. When the glass shattered, Jasmine bent down calmly, gathering the pieces with steady hands. "I'll have it cleaned up right away, ma'am," she said. Her tone respectful, her voice even. "Don't worry about it," Victoria replied loudly. Just loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Accidents are common when you hire this kind of people for special events. Conversation stopped. Eyes turned. Some looked away in discomfort, others watched for entertainment. Perhaps next time they should hire people who understand refined society. Victoria added, letting the words cut through the air like a knife. Still, Jasmine stood silent, her face calm, her mind steady. She had learned long ago that real strength doesn't shout. It waits, it observes, it acts when the time is right. "Of course, ma'am," she answered softly. And that quiet confidence unsettled Victoria more than any insult could. As Jasmine carried the broken glass toward the kitchen, she passed the main table. An elegant gray-haired man watched her with an unreadable expression. Their eyes met for a moment, and he nodded slightly, as if he saw something in her that others could never see. Robert Hartwell had built an empire by watching people when they believed no one was watching them. And in that instant, he saw two truths clearly: his wife's cruelty, and the quiet dignity of the young woman she tried to break. In the kitchen, Jasmine finally allowed her hands to tremble slightly, the broken glass slipping into the bin with a soft sound that echoed louder than words. Just 20 minutes earlier, she had been another student working to pay her bills. But now something inside her shifted. A quiet determination growing stronger. As if the universe had just changed its plans for her. No one in that golden hall could imagine what was coming. The young waitress they had mocked carried secrets that would soon turn humiliation into a storm no one would ever forget. Jasmine took a deep breath, wiped her hands, and straightened her shoulders. The night wasn't over, and neither was she. Meanwhile, Victoria had found her perfect audience. A circle of high society women, hungry for gossip, leaned closer as Victoria spoke like a queen addressing her court. "Did you see that?" she said, "the audacity of some people to think they belong here. Clearly someone didn't screen the staff properly." Laughter rippled through the group. And Margaret Wellington, heir to a pharmaceutical empire, nodded with delight. "Darling, you're absolutely right," she said. "Just yesterday, I dismissed a maid who questioned my cleaning methods. These people need to understand boundaries." Jasmine returned to the main hall, and the air itself seemed heavier as dozens of eyes followed her steps. The whispers surrounded her like smoke. "Of course she came back," one voice said. "She probably needs this job desperately. Imagine one of our daughters having to work like that. At least she knows her place." Victoria noticed Jasmine and raised her voice on purpose. "Anyway, girls, we shouldn't be too harsh," she said sweetly. "Not everyone is lucky enough to be born with a silver spoon and receive a proper education." What Victoria didn't know Was that Jasmine had graduated summa cum laude in economics from the University of Chicago? Long before Harvard welcomed her into its MBA program. She had translated legal documents as a teenager. For her mother, who cleaned offices at night to feed 3 children. At 16, she had already turned her family's savings into a fund that sent both her brothers to college. Now, as she replaced the crystal glasses in silence, another voice joined the attack. "Dear," said Margaret, her tone dripping with false kindness. "You understand that workers should remain discreet during events, don't you? Avoid drawing unnecessary attention." "Yes, ma'am," Jasmine replied softly, meeting her eyes with quiet strength. "I understand perfectly." Something in her tone, in that calm defiance, made Margaret hesitate for the first time that evening. There was something in Jasmine's voice, a confidence that didn't match the stereotype they expected to see. Margaret hesitated, sensing it. But Victoria noticed, and that hesitation only fueled her cruelty. "Margaret is right," she said, rising from her chair, her heels clicking like a countdown. "Perhaps we should have a quick chat about proper protocol. You can read, can't you?" The question sliced through the air with deliberate malice, loud enough for every nearby table to hear. Conversations died instantly, replaced by silence thick as glass. Dozens of eyes turned toward them, waiting for Jasmine's reaction. "Yes, ma'am, I read perfectly well," Jasmine replied, her voice calm, her posture straight. But there was something in her gaze, a spark that refused to bow. Victoria laughed, a sharp, unpleasant sound that scraped against the room. "Wonderful, then maybe you can read this for us," she said, lifting the event menu with theatrical cruelty, "so we can be sure the service staff understands exactly what's being served to our distinguished guests." It was a trap, a cruel humiliation crafted to expose her, to make her stumble over foreign words or lose her composure. Robert Hartwell watched from the head table, his chest tight with shame and anger. In 23 years of marriage, he had seen many faces of Victoria, but never this one, so openly, deliberately cruel. Jasmine accepted the menu with steady hands, and for the first time that night, a faint smile touched her lips. "With pleasure, ma'am." And then, to everyone's astonishment, she began reading in fluent, melodic French, the kind of accent only Paris itself could teach. Her voice flowed through the room like a song, each syllable crisp, elegant, every phrase pronounced with the ease of mastery. She had learned it years earlier, during a scholarship exchange in Lyon. And now that education cut sharper than any insult. Victoria's smile faded, her face draining of color. Margaret's jaw hung open, and whispers spread like wildfire. Jasmine finished the list gracefully, then closed the menu and handed it back with a calm smile. "I hope that was helpful, ma'am." The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time all evening, Victoria had nothing to say. And everyone in that glittering hall knew. The so-called waitress had more class than any of them. Robert stood slowly and crossed the room. His eyes met Jasmine's, not with pity, but with deep respect. And something else that felt like admiration. "Victoria," he said softly, his voice edged with warning. "Perhaps it's time we focus on the true purpose of this evening, charity." "Of course, dear," Victoria murmured quickly, trying to regain her composure, her voice trembling beneath the weight of humiliation. Jasmine nodded politely and walked away, leaving behind a silence heavy with shame. Margaret leaned close to Victoria and whispered, "Darling, perhaps we misjudged her." Victoria's fingers tightened around her arm. "We didn't misjudge anything," she hissed. "Academic tricks don't change who she really is. And before this night is over, I'll make sure everyone understands that perfectly well." There was something about Jasmine's voice, a calm articulation that didn't fit the image they expected. Margaret hesitated, unsure. And Victoria saw it, hungry to push harder. "Margaret is right," she said. rising from her chair, smile sharp as glass. Perhaps we should talk about proper protocol. You can read, can't you? The question hung in the air. Cold, deliberate, meant to wound. Conversation stopped, eyes turned. Waiting to see the waitress stumble. Yes, ma'am, I read perfectly well, Jasmine said. Still calm, still professional. But her eyes shone with something stronger. Victoria laughed, high-pitched and false. Then maybe you can read this for us, she said. Handing over the event menu, her tone dripping with venom. Let's make sure the staff knows what's being served. To our most important guests. It was a trap, meant to humiliate her. To make her trip over foreign words. To give Victoria an excuse to call security. From the head table, Robert watched in silence. His anger rising. In 23 years of marriage, he had never seen his wife be this cruel. Jasmine took the menu, her hand steady. A faint smile touched her lips. With pleasure, ma'am. Then, to everyone's shock, she began reading in flawless French. Her voice glided through the room, smooth and sure. Every syllable pronounced like music. Years of study and lying came alive in that moment. Victoria's face paled. Margaret stared, speechless. Around them, the laughter died. Jasmine closed the menu gently. Returned it with a serene smile. I hope that was helpful, ma'am. Silence filled the hall. For the first time that night, Victoria had no words. Robert stood, crossed the room. His eyes meeting Jasmine's with respect. And something close to admiration. Victoria, he said quietly. Perhaps it's time we remember why we're here. Charity. Of course, dear, she said quickly, masking her embarrassment with a brittle laugh. Jasmine turned away. But behind her she heard Margaret whisper, Darling, perhaps we misjudged her. Victoria's grip tightened on her friend's arm. We didn't misjudge anything, she hissed. Academic tricks don't change who she really is. Before this night is over, everyone will understand that perfectly well. I work as a waitress to help my family. And to finish my studies, Jasmine said quietly. Robert closed his eyes, processing the weight of what he had just heard. Harvard. My God, Jasmine. Victoria attacked a Harvard student out of pure prejudice. Mr. Hartwell, this happens more often than you think. Jasmine replied, her tone calm but firm. Your wife simply said out loud what many people think in silence. That doesn't make it acceptable, Robert said, his voice heavy with guilt and frustration. In fact, it makes it worse. He leaned forward. May I ask, what is your field of study at Harvard? Analysis of systemic discrimination in corporate environments, she answered. I'm writing a thesis on how prejudice shapes career opportunities for minorities. Robert stayed silent for a long moment, his expression thoughtful, almost troubled. Jasmine, may I make a proposal? It might sound unusual. 15 minutes later, they sat in a quiet corner of the hotel lobby, far from the noise of the gala. 2 untouched coffees rested between them. Robert spoke softly, as if confessing. My company, Hartwell Development, is struggling with serious diversity issues. The board wants real change, not just image correction. And after what I saw tonight, I do too. Jasmine listened closely, her academic instinct alert, her mind connecting the dots. I need someone with your expertise, Robert continued, to conduct a full audit of our hiring, promotions, and corporate culture. Someone who understands both the theory and the reality of discrimination. That's very generous, Mr. Hartwell, Jasmine began. But Robert interrupted her. It's not generosity, Jasmine. It's necessity and conscience. My company needs real change. And you clearly have the knowledge and strength to lead it. He slid a business card across the table. Compensation in line with top consultants. And full autonomy over your findings. Jasmine took the card slowly. feeling the weight of possibility in her hand. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly. Robert looked away for a moment. "Because I spent 23 years beside a woman whose prejudice I ignored. Because I built a company that probably reflects the same problems you study. And because after tonight, I need to do something meaningful. To repair the damage my family caused in the world." Then, the sound of heels echoed across the marble floor. Victoria appeared in the lobby, her expression cold and tense. "Robert, dear," she said with a forced smile. "What are you doing here with her?" "Victoria, I'm offering Jasmine a consulting position at the company." The silence that followed was heavy. Victoria blinked, caught between disbelief and outrage. "You're joking, right?" she said, her laugh sharp and nervous. "Robert, she's a waitress." "She's an MBA student at Harvard," Robert corrected calmly. "Specializing in exactly what our company needs most." Victoria's face drained of color. "Harvard," she repeated softly, as the truth struck her like a slap. "Yes, Victoria," Robert said firmly. "The woman you humiliated tonight is a Harvard academic working to support her family." Jasmine observed them silently, studying their gestures like a researcher watching human behavior. Victoria was in shock, but already calculating, trying to protect what mattered most, her reputation. "Well, Robert," she said finally, forcing a smile. "Even if that's true, we shouldn't make emotional decisions out of guilt." "It's not guilt, Victoria," Robert replied quietly, his tone calm but absolute. "It's responsibility. It's recognition of competence. And real business need," Robert said calmly. Victoria turned toward Jasmine, addressing her directly for the first time since the humiliation. "Darling, I'm sure you understand that sometimes misunderstandings happen at social events. Perhaps we should all just forget tonight's little disagreement." Her voice was sweet, but desperation cracked beneath the surface. Jasmine almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "Miss Hartwell, there was no misunderstanding," she replied softly. "Your comments were very clear and very direct." Victoria's smile faltered, but she forced it back into place. "Of course, dear," she said. "But intelligent people like you surely understand that social context can be complicated." "Actually," Jasmine replied with calm precision, "people with my academic background are quite precise about context, especially when it involves documented racial discrimination." The word documented hit Victoria like a slap. Her smile froze, and the color drained from her face. "Documented," Robert repeated slowly, watching his wife's reaction, his voice turning cold. "Victoria, were you recorded?" Jasmine didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her silence said everything. Robert stood up, adjusting his jacket. "Victoria," he said quietly, "this evening just became far more serious than you realize." He turned to Jasmine. "I'll await your response to the consulting proposal. My assistant will contact you tomorrow with the contract details." As they walked away, Jasmine could hear the first notes of a heated argument behind them. Victoria had finally realized she had attacked the wrong person, at the wrong moment, in the worst possible way. Later, in the quiet of the bathroom, Jasmine took the small recorder from her pocket and pressed play. Crystal clear audio, 23 minutes of explicit discrimination, followed by 15 minutes of frantic damage control. For her thesis, it was pure gold. For her career, it was a doorway to real change. She looked at herself in the mirror and smiled faintly. What had started as humiliation was transforming into something powerful, something that could shift the culture of an entire company. Victoria had tried to put her in her place, but instead, she had catapulted Jasmine into a position of power and purpose. The waitress was about to become the consultant. And when that happened, Victoria would finally learn what it truly meant to live in a world where competence and character matter more than privilege and name. 3 weeks later, Victoria Hartwell woke up with a strange feeling in her stomach. Her phone lit up, 47 missed calls. Hundreds of unread messages. When Victoria opened the first link Margaret had sent at 6 in the morning, it felt like the ground vanished beneath her feet. Business executive exposed for racial discrimination. Viral audio reveals the dark side of Boston's elite. Screamed the headline of the Boston Herald. Beneath it, a photo of her from the gala. Her face frozen mid-sneer, forever captured in shame. The 23-minute recording was everywhere. Every major radio station played her voice. Each cruel word echoing across the airwaves. Followed by outrage, interviews, and public disgust. Victoria ran downstairs. Her pulse racing, her phone trembling in her hand. Robert sat at the kitchen table. A cup of coffee beside him. His expression cold, distant, final. "Robert, you have to do something," she cried. "This is a coordinated attack. That waitress is trying to destroy us." "Victoria," Robert said calmly, without even looking up from his newspaper. "That waitress is now our new corporate diversity consultant." Victoria froze. "What did you say?" "Jasmine started yesterday," he continued. "Her first assignment is a full audit of our corporate culture, including every employee in leadership positions." He finally looked at her, his gaze sharp and unwavering. "I imagine you understand the implications." At that moment, Victoria's phone rang again. It was Patricia Whitmore, chairwoman of the tennis club where Victoria had been a member for 15 years. "Victoria, the board met this morning," Patricia said. "Your membership has been revoked, effective immediately. Your behavior in that recording violates our core values." The call ended before Victoria could speak. Her screen exploded with notifications. The WhatsApp group Ladies Who Lunch was on fire. Messages poured in. "I can't believe I spent years around someone like that. My daughter goes to Harvard. I wonder how many Jasmine she humiliated. James said he's cutting ties with Hartwell Development." Victoria opened Instagram. 3,000 followers, gone overnight. The comments under her latest photo were brutal. "Disgusting person. Racist exposed. I hope she learned something from this." Then Margaret called, her voice shaking. "Victoria, Charles canceled the renovation contract. He doesn't want his company associated with toxic people. I'm so sorry." By now Victoria was hyperventilating. "Robert, please, make that audio disappear. Sue her, do something." Robert stood slowly, folding his newspaper. "Victoria, you recorded this yourself. Every word came from your mouth. There's nothing to sue. Except your own cruelty." The phone rang again. Dr. Harrison, director of the Charitable Foundation, where Victoria had served as vice president for 8 years. "Victoria, the board has voted unanimously to remove you from all positions. Effective immediately." His voice was icy, detached. "Frankly, hearing one of our leaders speak with such prejudice was shocking to all of us." Victoria collapsed into a chair, her world unraveling one call at a time. In less than 24 hours, Victoria had lost everything. Her social standing, her friendships, her charity positions, and the trust of the very community she once ruled. "You know what the most ironic part is?" Robert said quietly, folding the newspaper. "Jasmine didn't even have to do anything. She just documented who you truly are, and let your own words destroy you." At that very moment, across town, Jasmine was walking through the glass doors of Hartwell Development's headquarters. Elegant suit, confident step. A briefcase filled with proposals for real change. In less than a month, she had gone from humiliated waitress to respected consultant. "Starting today," Robert announced to the department, "Jasmine Washington will lead our diversity and inclusion initiative. She has full authority to implement the changes we need." The room filled with quiet respect. Everyone had heard the audio. Everyone understood what her presence meant. Jasmine spoke with the same calm she had shown that night. "My goal isn't to punish anyone," she said, "but to build an environment where everyone feels valued and respected, no matter their background or appearance." Meanwhile, Victoria sat alone in her home, watching her world collapse one notification at a time. Cancelled invitations, silent friends. Every message another reminder that her reign was over. Margaret no longer answered her calls. Patricia Whitmore posted a smiling photo from the tennis club, captioned, "Celebrating our true values of inclusion and respect." Even her hairdresser had cancelled her appointment. Suddenly fully booked. That night, Robert walked into their bedroom. Victoria was sitting in front of the mirror, crying quietly. 23 years, he said softly. 23 years I lived with this person and pretended not to see. Robert, please, can we talk about this? It was a misunderstanding. Victoria, it wasn't a misunderstanding, he said coldly. It was you, being exactly who you've always been. Only this time, someone was recording it. He opened the closet and began removing his clothes. My lawyers will deliver the divorce papers tomorrow. The house is yours. Everything else will be divided by the court. You can't be serious, Victoria cried. Because of a waitress. Because of a Harvard student, Robert corrected. A woman you attacked out of pure racial prejudice. Because of 23 years of cruelty I chose to ignore. Because now I finally see who my wife truly is. He closed his suitcase quietly. And as Robert left the room, Victoria understood what she had really lost. Not just her marriage, but the entire identity she had built on privilege, now shattered like glass. The next morning, Jasmine woke in her small apartment near Harvard, ready for another day of work. She didn't know it yet, but the culture of an entire company was already beginning to change. Her phone lit up with messages of support from colleagues, professors, and even strangers who had heard her story. What had started as one extra night of work to pay the bills had become an opportunity to create real, measurable, lasting change. All because a privileged woman had completely underestimated the person she was trying to destroy. While Victoria faced the ruins of her old life, Jasmine walked confidently toward a new one, built on competence, dignity, and the quiet strength that turns humiliation into purpose. The waitress Victoria had tried to put in her place was now redefining what it truly meant to hold power and use it for good. 6 months later, Jasmine was promoted to Director of Diversity at Harvard Development. Her policies became a national model, inspiring companies across the country to change for real. Her private consulting firm grew rapidly, working with major corporations seeking transformation, not image. Meanwhile, Victoria lived alone in her empty mansion, divorced, friendless, shut out from the world she once ruled. Her apologies on social media only drew more criticism. Every attempt to rebuild her reputation collapsed under the weight of her own past. Robert remarried, a civil rights lawyer who shared his new purpose. He donated half his fortune to scholarships for students like Jasmine. At Harvard's graduation ceremony, Jasmine stood before hundreds of students, her voice steady. "Never let anyone define your worth based on prejudice," she said. "The best revenge is success." They never imagined possible. Victoria's audio still circulated in classrooms, a reminder of how words can destroy lives and how justice can rebuild them. Jasmine had turned humiliation into purpose, pain into progress, and her name into a legacy that would inspire generations to come. If you believe that no one should be judged by the color of their skin or their origin, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove underestimating people can cost much more than any fortune.